one of the big mistakes that they make, we've already talked about, is that they don't convert at the right tax bracket,
Mm-hmm.
right? They stop, they buy the industry institutional game plan, and they just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can cause, we've already talked about, a ton of problem.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that one of the big things that causes people to stop their Roth conversions short of where they really get the home run is that they're too focused on their Medicare expenses.
Mm.
And you and I deal with acronyms and everything, but the there's something in the Medicare world called IRMA, and IRMA is a surcharge that exists on Medicare Part B and
Mm-hmm.
Part D because those are income-based premiums for people who are on Medicare,
Mm.
and they have different thresholds published. And so you take folks that are listening to this that maybe you're thinking about doing Roth conversion.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So I'm excited. So I'm here to talk about one of the 5 wealth transfers. Practical Wealth. We think there's more opportunity to minimizing the losses in your financial life than it is to try to pick the winners. So the 5 wealth transfers are, just as a reminder, how you pay mortgage, taxes, how you fund retirement plans, how you pay for big ticket items, and how you pay for things you finance. Okay, big ticket items. So today we're going to talk about wealth transfer. Actually, it's the number one wealth transfer you have, which is taxes. Okay, and so I have Mr. Craig Ware on the show today, and his tagline is "The Taxman's Worst Nightmare." So we love that. so and and let me just give you a little bit about Craig's bio, and I'll let him tell you the rest about himself. So he says there's a 2.1 million problem in America's large IRAs, and people don't know about it. And so he's a financial guru with a heart, sought after speaker, financial advice in the financial advice sector. So he has 3 decades of experience, an impressive track record of saving individuals over $750 million. And he's an expert in navigating the complex world of retirement account and taxes. He's author of 2 Amazon best-selling books, Paying the Piper and The Roth Conversion Secrets. And he's created a revolutionary Rothology system which combines the art and science of financial planning to guide families towards a tax-free future. Craig, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Hey, thanks, Curtis. So glad to be here. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yes, my pleasure. So tell him anything I didn't tell him.
You know, uh, I
I'm
don't
sure
know
I
if there's
did,
a
but
I don't know. There's a whole lot more to tell. I mean, it's funny. You give people a little bit of info, and they write bios for you, and it makes you sound like you're fantastic. And really, I'm just kind of a guy out there like you. I've been in the trenches for a long, long time, and we've just seen a lot.
yeah.
And 13 years ago, I had a guy come to me, kind of push back a little bit on. He'd been listening. I used to do a talk radio show in the Houston area, and he came in and just kind of said, "Man, I think you're missing the ball on." Doing Roth conversions. And of course, I gave him the standard industry answer, which is, well, you never should convert above your tax bracket and blah, blah, blah. And he said, man, I don't think so. Anyway, that I didn't know it then, but that just kind of launched me into a totally different. What I discovered was there's a lot of work. If you've done a great job of doing what they told you to do and putting all your money in a 401k,
Right.
there's an incredible amount of tax to be paid over your lifetime. And like you're telling people, you go find that and avoid it, and it's a lot better for you instead of Uncle Sam.
Yes, and that's what we want. So so in your book, you said it's how to save $2.1 million of taxes over your lifetime. So I want to talk about that, and then let's get right. I want to get into the Roth conversions and what you're doing, what you've seen out there, and what people can
Yeah,
begin to look at. And who, because we said this before we started,
yeah,
who are the people
yeah,
that should be
yeah,
looking at this?
yeah. So the 2.1 million is kind of a hook. It was at the time it was a calculated number. where I kept track of how much total tax avoidance we had helped our clients with. And at that moment, when that was written, it was $2.1 million was the average tax avoidance during their life and for their heirs that we were saving our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got bad news for you, Curtis. It's changed. It's now like 3.3 million is what we found for the new client group. But
Mm-hmm.
these are people that are what I call the IRA millionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
the Joe and Betty or whatever their marital status is. They've been toting a lunch bucket, going to the company, putting money in the self-employed, put money in that profit sharing plan for a long time. And they wake up and they're, I don't know, 55, 60, 65 years old, and they got $1 million in there.
Mm-hmm.
They are really in the ripe spot of being able to avoid an incredible amount of tax over the rest of their life and for their kids. Now, a lot of people get their feelings hurt when I talk about the IRA millionaire because maybe they got 500,000, they got 700,000, or they're just getting started, they got a couple 100,000. Well, it should be a wake-up call to them to maybe talk to somebody like you and not put everything that they got into that, right? But it's also if they end up and they've saved other places or they've had a modest income and they don't have $1 million, the Roth conversion isn't necessarily off the table, but they're not going to have all the negative things happen to them that's going to happen to that IRA millionaire because they got so much money kind of overweighted inside that big account. Does that make sense to
It
you?
does. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 2.1 is actually, it's a number that everybody has on their own. You get $1 million, you got $1 million and you're in your mid 60s and you're not, taking huge amounts of money out currently, then there's several $1 million of taxes that you're going to pay in the future that if you get the right game plan of how to convert it from an IRA to a Roth, you will avoid paying those altogether. And we can talk about all the mechanics or details as you see fit.
Yeah. So because what happens is if you have that kind of money, $1 million, million and a half, $2 million in a qualified plan. So one of the things is that you see $2 million or $1 million, but that's not in purchasing power. That doesn't buy the same amount of money, right? And so retirement is not static. So you may have to pull out more money to buy. So if you have $100,000 income and inflation is 5%, you may need $200,000 in 10 years or so, 20 years to live the same lifestyle, which means that you're going to be pulling it out and maybe paying 30-40% tax on that, right? To maintain your standard of living.
For sure. Yeah. And of course, what nobody thinks a lot about when they're still in the accumulation phase is that one of these days, these required minimum distributions are going to come along.
Yep.
And for that IRA millionaire, we find that a lot of them are just for their lifetime. It's just kind of extra money. They're not going to be using it unless they have some really big problem or want to give a lot of money or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're really accomplishing by doing the Roth conversions is you're finding a way to pay the taxes under your terms over your time frame instead of just kind of putting your head in the sand and waiting until the IRS forces you to start taking those distributions. And the problem is once the distributions start coming in, now all of a sudden what happens? Probably now you went from none of your Social Security being taxed to 85% of it being taxed. And in addition to that, you get a little love letter from Medicare, and they're saying now you got your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums are going to start going up. And, for a married couple, that can go as much as $15,000 a year.
Wow.
So you get the conversions done and you can avoid a lot of pain, man.
All right. So let's talk about that. Now, that's the pain. All right. So you just showed you the pain. So now I hope that will perk you up that if you're a person that should be thinking about this, here's why. So we didn't give you here's the aspirin for your headache we just created for you.
That's right. So which part of that you want me to start with, man?
So let's start with why. So we know what it is. Okay. What is it? Why does it help? And what's do you do it all at once? Do you do it, that kind of stuff? Like how, I guess mechanically, I do want to get into mechanics a little bit.
Kind of basics for, so that I don't assume anything. once you decide that you want to take money from your IRA and move it over to your Roth, you pay tax when you do that, right, Curtis?
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
becomes taxable income, goes on the tax return, does its thing. But once it gets into that Roth, there ain't no more tax to be paid forever, for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of your life. And when you leave it to your heirs, they got to take it out within 10 years, but it's not taxable to them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when it's in that IRA and it continues to grow and grow and grow, all you're really doing is you're as you kind of alluded to earlier, you're just leaving more and more of it becomes owed to Uncle Sam. You got a $1 million account grows to two. There's a whole lot of that money that just goes to Uncle Sam, and they maybe don't get it on the day you look at your statement, but anytime you want access to it, or when they force you to start taking it out through required minimum distributions,
Right.
then, and the title of my first book, then you got to pay the piper. It's time
Right.
to do it. And so the whole
Or when you pass away, and maybe not so much with your spouse, but then when it goes to your kids, you could lose a great deal of it in that transfer to
yeah,
the
they
next
do. Yeah,
generation.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, you do the math on it. Even a modest estate, if you got three kids, probably Uncle Sam's going to get as much as any one individually of your kids is going to get, and they're going to get it in taxes. And of course, they're going to throw the kids into higher tax brackets and all those things for years to come too.
Because they
But
want the money right away. They're not trying to stretch it out over 10 years. They
yeah,
just
you're right. You're
right,
right. Uncle Sam ain't waiting. Nor are
right,
the
right.
kids. They're going to want to take it out
They
too.
want to take their money. And so
Yeah.
Uncle Sam knows that. So it's like, okay, we're gonna get you, you can get it, but you got to pay us first because we want
Yeah. So
our pound
to
of flesh.
your point, the strategic part of this is really you got to get the timing and the right tax bracket right of how you pull that money out of the IRA, because just to get kind of ticked off at the government and say I'm just going to take it all out and pay taxes, well, you can do that, and I could probably show you will pay less tax by doing it that way than over your lifetime. But what you just did is you just killed your net worth.
Yeah.
You know, too much tax paid up front is not a good thing. And so what most of the industry will tell you is that, well, you just, in most calculators and all that they're going to make it to where they'll tell you you don't ever want to convert if you have to go above your current tax bracket. And I won't take our time now, but that math just doesn't work. If you have a larger IRA, you just can't convert it fast enough to do benefit. And remember, I mean, the big benefit is you got to lower that balance of the IRA so that the resulting required minimum distribution doesn't wreak havoc on you for the rest of your life through
Mm-hmm.
Medicare and through taxation and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That making some sense?
It does. Yep.
Yeah, and I wish I could tell you how to find the optimal strategy, um, but that's something that's just got a lot of moving pieces and very unique. And of course, that's part of what our firm does for people. But
Right.
but I do know that you don't want to just assume that you stay in your lowest tax bracket. And if your advisor or CPA is telling you that, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying they need to prove to you why that is, as opposed to just make that assumption. Because I'll tell you that for the IRA millionaires, very seldom is their current tax bracket the right strategy. You simply have to get to a higher tax bracket, converting over a shorter period of time to get to where the money is, where the sweet honey is in the tax savings is at a tax bracket higher than where you currently are.
Really?
Almost
Huh.
almost every time. Almost
Okay.
every time. If you
That's
think about it,
counterintuitive. That's kind of
it
that's
is.
counterintuitive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the math holds that out. And
Mm-hmm.
and but there are two objectives, right? You got to get the maximum amount of tax avoidance you possibly can while holding your net worth as high as you possibly can.
Hmm.
If you pay too much tax too fast, you lower your net worth. If you pay the tax and do the conversion too slow, you end up paying a lot more tax than probably you would have had you just left it alone and paid your RMDs out.
Hmm. That is a balance. I mean, and that's a specialty, Craig, right? Because most, I hate to, most people that do taxes are tax preparers. They're not tax strategists, honestly. And so a lot of people give too much credence to the CPA. Now to my CPA friends out there, but y'all work a lot. You got a lot of returns to do. I mean, you don't have time for tax planning. a lot of times. And you're not trying to replace them. It's just, hey, here's a specialty that we have, and this is another way to look at this, because you need somebody that this is what they do. Like, I try to stay in my lane, right?
Yeah.
And keeps
You're
me out of
making a
trouble.
really, yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, our, my education is not to disparage financial advisors or CPAs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not what they do. And we've just found a niche where we come alongside and we want to help that CPA do a better job for their client. We want to help
Mm-hmm.
the advisor do a better job um, by helping the client by just being part of the financial team. And you're right, it's a specialty.
Right.
I've been 13 years into it, and it's like I'm learning something every year.
Yeah, well, investing is a team sport. You should be a team sport, right? So nobody can know it all. Nobody has this was a more problem with like the stock type people. Nobody has a working crystal ball. Last time I checked, right?
I
And
don't.
yeah, I don't either. And so let me ask you. So I want to go into, this is from one of the books, but what are in your opinion, the 5 biggest mistakes IRA millionaires make, or 3 to 5, or depending on how much time we have, and how can they
Well,
avoid
yeah, I mean, I don't have the book in front of me, and I wrote it
them?
some time ago, but let me just kind of riff on what we deal with,
Yeah.
with people. Um, one of the big mistakes that they make, we've already talked about, is that they don't convert at the right tax bracket,
Mm-hmm.
right? They stop, they buy the industry institutional game plan, and they just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can cause, we've already talked about, a ton of problem.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that one of the big things that causes people to stop their Roth conversions short of where they really get the home run is that they're too focused on their Medicare expenses.
Hmm.
And you and I deal with acronyms and everything, but the there's something in the Medicare world called IRMA, and IRMA is a surcharge that exists on Medicare Part B and
Mm-hmm.
Part D because those are income-based premiums for people who are on Medicare,
Hmm.
and they have different thresholds published. And so you take folks that are listening to this that maybe you're thinking about doing Roth conversions, they probably know what IRMA is. And IRMA can cause your Medicare premiums, those Part D and B premiums, to increase pretty significantly. And so a lot of people believe that you don't want to do Roth conversions if it'll take you into a higher IRMA threshold, which again, I'm going to say something counterintuitive. When you start doing Roth conversions, it will take you into a higher IRMA category, but only for a short period of time. And then you drop down and you're going to pay minimum Medicare premiums for the rest of your life. If you
That's what I
don't,
was thinking. I was going to ask you, does it jumps up, but that's temporary, because your income's, once you convert it, that income is going to drop again, and then will it revert back to the mean? It
that's
will,
right.
or
And
lower. Okay.
that's right. But and now think about that. If you don't convert, when you start having required minimum distributions start kicking in, there's nothing you can do about that. You're kind of stuck because they're going to look at that RMD coming in every year. They're going to add it to your other income. They're going to add it to your Social Security, and you're going to be in that IRMA category for the rest of your lifetime and for your spouse. So if you get ahead of it, then you get to control what that's going to look like as opposed to just kind of sitting there in the squat.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think that, like, because most of the planning world is to focus on accumulation, or what I call going up the mountain, right? But when you climb Mount Everest, the people die coming down the mountain. Okay, that's where most of the fatalities occur. And so going down the mountain, I call it, is distribution. What is your distribution strategy? How are you going to get this money out? Because if you're following, we call it, Craig, the accumulation theory. If you're following the accumulation theory, which is tenuous at best, because I don't really think it works. But if you're all in at this point, then okay. I had clients that were like mad as hell. They didn't need the money, and they had to take the RMDs. They were fine and didn't really need it, but they had to take it, and or suffer a 50% excise tax. So you can't like sleep it. You need to be aware of what's going on, and you need to plan this. So if you've got your IRA millionaires, you got $1 million, you're 50-ish, and you already got 900,000, 800,000, and you're maxing it out, we're talking to you. Okay. You
Yeah.
need to start thinking about that, because you got time to take the hit, and have time for your portfolio to recover, but you don't even need as much if you don't have to, if it's not taxed coming out.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you do conversions strategically at the right pace, your portfolio won't even take a hit. I mean,
Mm,
think about it. You got $1 million. If it earns, I don't know, let's say it earns 6% a year,
mm-hmm.
it's going to grow by 60 grand. If you convert 100,000, you've only seen it go down by just a little bit, right?
Right.
So it's not as though you got to convert everything or get a big 25% hit on your balance. That's the secret of getting that strategically done, is that you
So
don't.
you don't have, all right. So, because I people think that you have to convert, if you got to convert it all over and pay that 20%, and but you don't have to do it. You're talking about strategically, looking at your situation, your tax code, and okay, well, this year we're going to do this, and this year, yeah, that makes sense.
That's
That's
right.
why
Yeah.
it's a strategy. Like, you got somebody that understands this stuff, you got to do it.
Yeah,
The
that's
timing is
exactly.
everything.
Yeah, it is. And you don't want to get in too big a hurry,
Mm-hmm.
but you also don't want to get too late to the party, because you have to you have to find the right strategy where you do those two things. You want to avoid the most tax
Mm-hmm.
for you and your heirs, and you want to keep your net worth as high as you possibly can. And that's just a balancing act with just a few variables, but it
Mm-hmm.
it takes really, struggling through it and making sure that you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool stuff. What am I missing? What else should I be asking you? 'Cause I'm like,
Man,
you took me a lot of different directions, so I want
yeah,
want to make sure
no,
we get
I
some
mean,
good stuff out here.
I think we're good. I mean, I think the point that I like to try to make to people in my books and through different events that we do is just to start paying attention to this stuff. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just think I'll wait till I'm in a lower tax bracket, because that's not the time to do it. You're probably not going to end up in a lower tax bracket if you're the average person.
Right.
You don't want to
Because
wait until you
because let's
retire.
stop that. That means you're poor, right? You're poorer, right? I mean, if you're in a lower tax, it means you make less money. You're poorer. So when people, it's like, it kills when people say, well, you're probably been in a lower tax bracket when you retire. No, you're not. Okay. Because think about this. If you're making $100,000 a year, this is the other big lie. Okay. Now you got me revved up. So if you make 100 grand a year, your effective tax rate is like 8.8% or something crazy like that. So if you put in $10,000, you're saving $800 or 8%, right?
Yep,
And deferring it to a point where if you're an IRA millionaire, you're going to pay 30-40% to get that money out.
that's right.
So you have to, that's, you have to you have to think about that going up, but they never teach that part
Oh
early
no.
on.
Oh no.
And you
No.
have to look at saving taxes over your lifetime, and then where's the best way to structure this. And I think that's a really, because people don't really understand the wealth transfer, because it's not the tax, it's not just the tax, it's the opportunity cost. Because if you pay a tax you didn't have to pay, then that's money you lost to you forever. So you have to look at all of that. You have to, you got to sit down and got to analyze that. But we just see our statements and go, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, plus
So
the accumulation phase of your life is a different skill set than when you get ready to start using the money, right?
yeah, yeah,
And this is just one of the keys. This Roth conversion thing is just kind of what opens the box to really thinking about how to strategically change a lot of different things when you get ready to start retiring. You get a few years away from retirement, this becomes a really important subject.
yeah, yeah. So when should they start to I think you said it, but I want to make sure I get this out here. When should they start thinking about having this conversation?
I think they need to start changing their strategy around 55, not dumping everything, not overdoing that 401k. Around 59 and a half, a lot of the tax rules changed where it's pretty easy to do Roth conversions
Mm-hmm.
compared to
Mm-hmm.
before that. But for sure, around 59 and a half, whether you're still working or not, you need to have you need to really start having some serious conversations about it. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, at 55, you need to change how aggressively you're saving into that pot.
Right. I Well, I'm so gonna ask you, because this is what I'll say. So listen, up to the match, you should fund it, but past that, you might want to consider where you put the rest of that money. If you still have it to put away, we actually like if they qualify for, we prefer at our firm putting it in permanent insurance, which kind of comps the same thing, but some good mixture of the two.
Yeah, I love that. As you and I were
Hmm.
talking about, I think even if you get to the point where you're let's say about to retire or retired and you are that IRA millionaire, if you need to, let's say your perfect strategy converts a couple $100,000 a year, man, I'd be a huge proponent of them taking some meaningful amount of that 200,000 and come seeing a guy like you to set up a separate account that can grow tax free, use it tax free, multiply it to their heirs, do amazing things that only life insurance can do in our country, right? And
Right.
then the balance of it that doesn't need to go to a life insurance, that's got to still stay in something financial or real estate or another type of investment.
Right.
They can invest in real estate inside their Roth IRA and their real and their other. They don't have to be all in the stock market,
Yeah, or
right?
notes, or tax
Anything,
liens, or
anything.
whatever. Yeah,
That's
anything
right.
that
Just
we
almost
always go back to is about becoming, not about buying. So you gotta be willing to invest in your knowledge, because you have
yeah,
the capital, and then you got to invest in, okay, if you want to do alternative things, then you got to kind of learn the alternatives, or let's say you can do what is things called alternative stuff where you're doing syndications or whatever, but you should
right.
do due diligence on that. But I do like the idea of non-correlated assets, non-correlated with the stock market, but you have to do your, so we're not giving investment advice, you have to do your homework. It's I like to just let people know these ways exist. There's other ways to skin a cat, but you want to,
Yeah.
kind of jailbreak your money a little bit. Right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
One of the most successful guys that I ever had when I had my traditional financial planning practice many years ago, one of the most successful guys that I ever got an opportunity to meet with. Again, he came to me because of the talk radio show,
Hmm.
and he just laid everything out and he said, "Can you give me some ideas of how to improve on what I'm doing?" And I looked at his situation, Curtis, and he did what you probably have been telling your clients to do for years, but he did it. And I got to see him at age in his mid 60s. He had over 2 million bucks sitting in one of the old mutual policies that were dividend paying policies.
Yep. Yep.
2 million bucks. And he used that money to go build storage facilities, self storage type of things. So he'd go in and he'd borrow his own money. He'd go build a storage facility. He'd get it up and going, sell it, pay back his loan, and he was clipping dividends of 7 and 8% at the time.
Yeah.
And my response to him was, "Dude, I don't think anybody can do any better than what you've done because everything in his world was tax free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
he had no stock market volatility at all.
that's a
But
peaceful
I
way to
learned a
sleep at
lot.
night.
I learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah, success leaves clues. Like if you cut open, like you get these people, a lot of times, like if you read like The Millionaire Next Door, one of the things they say is that he asked the survey, then how much do you credit your financial, your stockbroker towards your success? I think the overall number was like 10, 11%, like not very high,
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
and that's, so it's I because see, people are trained by the industry that this stuff is tax. You need a professional, but I mean overall you need a professional. But a lot of 2 + 2 is 4. It's like I always treat money as you have the ability to learn this stuff. I think it gets overcomplicated because the Wall Street's advice in so many words is give your money to us. Okay,
right,
basically,
right.
you don't have the time, the temperament, the train to manage this stuff. It's complicated. Just give it to us, and we'll, what's your number, and let us hold it for 20, 30 years. Let's charge you fees for 30 years.
That's right.
And
Whether it goes up or down, whether it
right,
goes
whether it
up
goes
or
up or down. So
down.
I'm not throwing it in a bus. It is what it is. So if you don't want to do your homework to figure out how it works, okay, well, you get what you get.
Yeah,
And because I always tell clients, it's not Curtis's money, it's your money, right? And so it can't be more important to me than it is to you. So if I say, look, I need you to read a book a month on money, don't fight me.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and
it's easy to go stick it away into a mutual fund or an ETF and not pay any attention to it.
yeah,
And it's easy to just leave it in the IRA and say, I'm just going to pay taxes as late as I possibly can. But the reality is, both of those strategies don't lead you to the greatest amount of success and the amount of freedom in your life.
Yeah.
So when we're telling a story to people that says, look, listen to me. If you've saved really well, there is a freight train coming. And that freight train is a tsunami of taxes once you start having to take that money out. You get a choice. You get to decide to stick your head in the sand and just let that train run over you
Mm-hmm.
and then complain about it the rest of your life, how high your taxes are, or you kind of take the bull by the horns, as we say down here in Texas, and you go out and you learn a few things and you go do something about it.
Yes.
You
Yes. I
don't
love
have
that.
to, somebody doesn't have to use a guy like me to come up with the optimal strategy.
Mm-hmm.
This is learnable stuff. There's just a lot of moving pieces, and most people want to make sure they get the right answer. But we talk to a lot of people every month that call in and let us kind of give them advice, and it's just there just are many different variables that impact what should you do. Now, if one of your listeners out there and they're an engineer and they love this stuff and they feel like they got it right, then man, I'm waving the checkered flag. Go for it, man.
Right. Right.
And as long as, and if I'm speaking to that engineer, as long as you've been willing to take off the blinders and go to a higher tax bracket and pay some IRMA in your calculations, then you probably
Mm-hmm.
got it right. But if you place those blinders and those limitations on, you're leaving probably $1 million on the table for the IRS. And man, I don't want you to do that. Curtis
Right.
didn't want you to do that.
Curtis does not want you to do that. That's yeah, gotcha. You gotta pay attention to this. So speaking of books, tell them about the books. I think you have a gift for them.
Yeah. So the gift is that we'll put in your show notes, we'll put a special link that because they're listening to your show and they came through your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
we're just going to give them my second book. It's called Roth Conversion Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
They can go get it on Amazon for $20, or they can just hit the link and get it for free because they listen to you and uh, subscribe to your channel.
We love that. So we're
And
gonna
that's
get
a
that
and
out
that's a
there.
book that kind of gets into the nitty gritty. It gets into the first book I wrote was called Paying the Piper,
Mm-hmm.
and they can go to my website and they can get that for free. And that was done 3 or 4 years ago. And man, I tell you what, I was called every name in the book when I put that thing out.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, folks have started figuring out, hey, man, there's something to this. But they're doing it wrong. And that's the subtitle is the 5 biggest mistakes. And so what I tried to do in that second book is point out what all those mistakes were and how you can avoid them and how you can have a better life through less taxes.
Okay. And so the website where that is craigware.com.
CraigWear.com. But
Okay.
to get the book that we're going to give them free from you, we'll put it
Mm-hmm.
in the show notes and it'll have, the your show name on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna put that in the show notes. So make sure that when you get done, whether it's through the YouTube or through iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, when you go click the show notes. So first of all, before you do that, leave us a review if you like this episode and share it. Yeah, so that more people can find this information, right? And then go down a little bit farther and then hit the link and then get the book and learn some
Sounds
stuff,
great.
guys. You should be reading a book a month on money, at
Yep.
least. Okay. And if you do that, I guarantee you'll be a different person this time next 12 months from now. You'll be a different person financially because our goal, Craig, is to help our clients move. I got this from Dan Sullivan, right? I want you to move from what I call economic childhood to economic adulthood. Okay.
Sounds good.
Childhood, your child, you're dependent,
Yeah.
bureaucracy is taking care of you. We want you to be economic adult where you're independent financially, you're an independent thinker. And now that's just a little bit of work. That's reading 12, 15 pages a day, listening to shows like this, calling up people that have shared stuff that this is interesting. And I might be the type of person he's talking about. Well, call him in. All right. Get the book and call him in. So anything else, Craig, you want to share? I feel like
No,
we
man,
had
I
a
think
good
we covered it, man. We did a great
yeah.
job. Thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
you letting me be here with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So thank you for the gift for our listeners. And so go out there. We'll have Roth Conversion Secrets in the show notes. Go get it and take some notes. Go to his website. Pick up the other one, Paying the Piper. Okay, and learn the 7 sex traps hidden in your 401k and IRAs. I like that one too because I really rail against that. So I want to get you during the accumulation phase first. So I want you to get both. And so put both those in the show notes. And guys, go out there, make it a prosperous day. And thanks again for listening to the Practical Wealth Show. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate it.